And we are live.
Hello and welcome everyone to today's session. I'm Siddharth Pandey, and over the next action-packed 90 minutes, we will be discussing one of the most important mega trends of our generation, digital transformation. We will get to hear and also ask questions directly from top global experts and practitioners on how digital transformation is rapidly changing businesses. As these leaders will tell us, it's not a question of whether businesses should embrace digital transformation, but it's a matter of survival and success. So, what should businesses and future leaders do for winning in the digital age? These various nuances of digital transformation and being successful in the digital age have been articulated by Nitin Seth, CEO of Incido, in his book, 7 Building Blocks of Successful Digital Transformation, Winning in the Digital Age. And we will get to take part as the book is officially launched in India in just a short while. So thank you all for taking time out and joining us today. This session is also being streamed on YouTube, and you can use the hashtag Winning in the Digital Age to share this session. And you can also post your questions in the Q&A option on Zoom. Now, if you're a member of the press, do remember to also mention the name of your media organization while posting your question. Now, as technology revolutionizes every facet of our lives, from ordering groceries to buying cars that drive themselves to hopefully even being able to buy a vacation to the moon, well, at least for those of us who have that extra cash, digital transformation is not only changing the rules of business, leading innovation and acting as a disruptor to exciting business models, but it's also creating new businesses being built using digital technologies. Now, if consumers are spoiled for choice and even confused with the information and choice overload, just imagine what businesses are going through. While digital transformation is driving innovation, it's also a complex minefield for businesses to navigate. Well, we are honored to have global experts joining us today to launch Nitin's book on winning in the digital age, and also take part in what promises to be a very informative and exciting discussion. So joining us, Nitin Seth, CEO at Incido, which is a high-growth technology services firm focused on digital data and analytics. Before Incido, Nitin has in his career spanning more than 2 decades served in key positions, including as Chief Operating Officer at Flipkart, the Managing Director and Country Head for Fidelity International, and Director at McKinsey Global Knowledge Center in India. Nitin has also served twice on Executive Council of NASSCOM, an MBA from the Indian Institute of Management IIM, Lucknow, and an engineering degree from the Indian Institute of Technology in Delhi. Nitin is also passionate about mentoring and nurturing leaders. Great to have you with us, Nitin.
Hi, Siddharth. Very nice to be here, and very nice that we are launching the book today, and I'm especially pleased that we have really some great industry leaders, but also very importantly, great friends together here. So that makes it really special for me.
Great to have you with us, Nitin. Well, let me also move along to Chatri Sityautong, is Chairman and CEO of One Championship, the world's largest martial arts company. And just to give you a perspective, his company is bigger than even the Indian Premier League IPL. Now, Chatri, who has an MBA from Harvard University, is also a living testament to what hard work, focus, and perseverance can achieve. His life has been about struggle, failure, and also being able to pull oneself out from despair. Having to live on the streets when his family was hit by the Asian financial crisis, Chatri embraced martial arts, which gave him the inner strength to succeed and to eventually build his company using digital transformation. So, Chatri, excited to have you here. Can we expect some digital martial art tips from you today?
Yes. Well, everything's going virtual now, so people can learn martial arts virtually. But no, in all seriousness, I'm super honored to be here today to talk about Nitin's book and what an impact. People don't know that Nitin is also a CEO advisor for me for the last few years and has been really impactful in terms of his strategic thinking, in terms of his leadership thoughts, and just everything, and obviously on the digital front as well. And so there's no better person to help lead India, and the rest of the world on digital transformation than Nitin.
Excellent. Great to have you with us, Chatri, today. Let me also move along to Leo Puri. Leo is a financial whiz kid, if you will. He's a financial sector veteran with over 30 years experience in consultancy and finance. Leo has worked at McKinsey, Warburg Pincus, and former CEO and managing director at UTI Asset Management Company. He has a long innings with him of deep knowledge, not only in finance and consultancy, but also very keenly tracks technology. So great to have you with us today, Leo.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and to celebrate Nitin's achievement in putting this book together.
Lovely. And we are also honored to welcome Raman Roy. Raman is someone actually who needs little introduction. Currently the chairman and managing director of Quattro. He's a serial entrepreneur. Raman has also served as chairman of NASSCOM. Good to have you with us, Raman. Excited about the book?
Yes, thank you, Siddharth and Nitin. Thank you for putting it all together in a book. This is the future. And, the industry I come from is going to evolve into something very different from where we are today. And the 7 building blocks that Nitin brings about are truly the building blocks where the industry and globally everything services sector will go.
Absolutely. And we'd be just keenly waiting to hear from you more about that as well. Also joining us, we're honored to have Puneet Chandok, who is the president for Amazon Web Service, AWS for India and South Asia. Before joining AWS, Puneet was a partner at McKinsey & Company. He's also served as Deputy General Manager at Asia Pacific at IBM and Technology Consultant at Hewitt Associates. Puneet also has an MBA from the Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta. And while Puneet's business is literally in the cloud, his feet are firmly on the ground as he leads a team that manages the world's largest cloud computing system, which, as Nitin in fact described, is as critical, if not more, than AI in digital transformation. Hi, Puneet. Great to have you on board.
Absolutely thrilled to be here. I'm a big fan of Nitin, his work and his leadership over the last 15 odd years. And I think now with this book, Winning in the Digital Age, I love the way he's differentiated between all the noise around us on digital and got to the real signals and the real actionable insights. I think it's a must read for all business leaders, all tech leaders, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here today.
Excellent. And well, thank you again for joining us today. Well, moving on, writing a book, according to noted English author Virginia Woolf, involves every secret of a writer's soul, every experience of his life, even and every quality of his mind is written in his works. Nitin Seth has put his heart and soul in his book. Let's take a look at that journey and what the book is all about. So just what does it take to win in the digital age? Nitin has synthesized over 2 decades of his own practical experience in digital to bring clarity to this complex topic of digital transformation. Winning in the digital age, 7 building blocks for successful digital transformation has already become an Amazon bestseller. And today we are very happy to have all of you join us for the official launch of the book in India. And in keeping with the title of the book, where better to launch it than right here online in the digital age? Nitin, if I could request you just to give us a brief insight into what prompted you to write this book and who is the book really aimed for? Is it for the practitioners and companies, or is it for the enthusiasts or explorers starting out in the field? Nitin.
Thanks, Siddharth. I'll give you a short answer and then also a slightly longer answer. The short answer is that, look, digital is one of the mega trends of our age, or the mega trend of our age. It is such a humongous opportunity, but at the same time, there is such a long way to go, and I felt that I had something helpful to contribute to this. I had something useful to say here, and that's why I wrote this book. Now, the slightly longer answer that if you look at digital, 70% of digital transformation, there is so much money going here. There's hundreds of billions of dollars which is going into digital transformation. But if you look at the net impact of it, 70% or so digital initiatives either fail or don't realize their full potential. So that to me has always really struck me that, hey, what is happening? There is this big gap. Now, when you look at the topic of digital, there are a lot of futurists writing about, hey, this is how AI is going to play out, or cloud or blockchain is going to play out. And that's very interesting. But what I've always felt a gap is that of a practitioner's handbook, somebody who's kind of done it and then kind of been able to put it together in a way which can be kind of used. And that's what I felt, that's really what I've tried to do. And I've been very fortunate that my career over the last 20, 25 years, and a lot of people here have been an important part of it, especially Leo. When I started my career in McKinsey, the internet era was just taking off. So I had the opportunity of really, working closely on some of the, early internet kind of initiatives that were done in India. And that kind of, encouraged me to do a .com startup, which was, a very interesting phase in this whole digital era, which bombed, but I learned a lot. I came back to McKinsey and then, led the McKinsey Knowledge Center, which is kind of, I was right place, right time, because analytics was really kind of, coming to life, and I had the opportunity of setting that up. And then later going to Flipkart, which is such a unique company, such an amazing digital native. And I got a very different perspective of the world. And then over the last 3 years at Incido, serving some of the largest corporations in the world. So some of the challenges that I've seen in India, and then, I've been so surprised that, even in some of the largest companies in the world, those challenges around digital transformation are very much there. Yeah. And that's really, those string of experiences that I've had, that's really what I've tried to put together. But in a way, where it's kind of, you break down a complex problem into kind of more, into more simple, actionable building blocks. That's really what I've tried to do. That's really what this book is about, trying to make a complex topic simple and actionable. Yeah, move from theory to action. Now, who is this book targeted to? See, look, digital is a global trend. Digital is global. In the digital world, you cannot be local. Just the sheer nature of digital. So this book is a global book. This is something I hope will be relevant for audience across the world. Who is this targeted to? I think this is a book which is relevant for CEOs, but is also relevant for the young professional. And I think it's really for the young professional, I hope this makes a real difference. Some 25, 30 years back, I read this book Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, and that made a huge impact for me. And that's something which has always stayed with me, that one book made a big difference for me. And I really hope this book can be that Seven Habits of Highly Effective People for the 21st century. That's really my ambition with this.
Absolutely, and books can change the future. And if as you said, for you, one book did it. And this, of course, is a very comprehensive book, 7 sections, and right from businesses to young leaders starting out in the world, you in fact shared your practical insights. Now, it's not easy writing a book, Nitin, I know, because apart from managing a company and of course doing that very successfully, it also takes away your time. And you've been supported by, I think, 3 very formidable and instrumental a bunch of ladies also who've helped you in that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There is this African proverb that it takes a village to raise a child, and writing a book is something like that. So, this has been quite a journey, and, I really wanted to, there are lots of people to thank, especially my colleagues and all my clients, over the last 25 years, for all the learning opportunities. But there are three people in particular I would like to thank. First is my colleague Shailaja Venkatayar, who's the CHRO of my company. Number of my colleagues at Incedo have helped in the process of publishing this book. A book is a process, like most things in life. And I'm really thankful to my colleagues and to Shailaja, who was the leader of the pack. So Shailaja, thank you so much. I also really want to thank Ankita Podar. Ankita, I don't know if Ankita is there. Ankita was the editor from my publisher, Penguin Random House. I was really honored that Penguin decided to publish this book. And Ankita was very patient through that process. And last and most importantly, my wife Arpana. Arpana, if you can join me here. So look, this book has been in works for maybe 8-10 years. So it's been a kind of long process, and it takes a lot. And so Arpana has been the anchor, who's because of whom I really have been able to manage a lot of things, including writing this book. So thank you. So I'd like to request the 3 ladies, Shailaja, Ankita, and Arpana, to unveil the book, please. Yeah. So that should be our formal book launch. Yeah. So yeah, just open it. Yeah, that's it.
And if I can request the rest of the panel members also that they can now join in and help unveil the book.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. And in fact, this promises to be really a very comprehensive read. I think Nitin, you really put your heart and soul in it. And this, very importantly, is not just a theoretical book. It's a practitioner's guidebook. And you've really shared your expertise and real life experience in this book. And it's going to be really, really worthwhile to read this book. And it's already the bestseller on Amazon, so people can just order their copies from Amazon, or of course buy it from their stores as well. Now at this point, I'd like to invite Ankita from Penguin Publishing to tell us a little bit about this book and why Penguin chose to publish this book.
It was actually a very easy decision for us to take to publish this book. In our first meeting with Nitin's team, we'd met with Apurv and with Soumya in our first meeting, and it was an easy decision to take. In the first day, we decided that we had to absolutely do this book. When we started working on it, Nitin had a very, very clear vision of where he wanted this book to go, what he wanted to include, what he didn't want to include, which made my job as an editor a lot easier. It's really easy to work with somebody who has such a clear vision of what it is that they want. And it was very comprehensive. I actually learned a lot while reading and editing the book myself. And it turned out to be a really good decision because with Amazon, like you said, it was in our top 10 in the Amazon list, which is actually not something that we've had with our division before. It was our first foray into a bestseller list. It sold over 5,000 copies, I want to say, in the first 15 days. And it's still going from strength to strength. We've not had to ever before introduce a reprint so early in a book publishing cycle. So we've learned so much while doing this book, and it's been a really, really good book for us to have decided to publish.
Well, thank you so much, Ankita. And as you said, it's already gone for one reprint, and I suspect it's going to go for many more reprints as well. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you all for being part of the official launch of the book. Nitin, and now just getting back to the book, if you will, for a while. You've talked about the 7 building blocks for successful digital transformation. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Sure, Siddharth. Sure. Let me. Is it okay if I now launch into my presentation? And yeah. So
Absolutely.
give me a sec. Give me a second. Let me. Okay. There it is. Okay. Okay. So let me take the next 15, maybe 20 minutes to take you through the key concepts or the insights. What is it that I'm really trying to share in this book? It's a big book. It's more than 500 pages because it's a big topic. So I'll try my best to kind of really try to share something meaningful over the next 15 minutes. As I said earlier, it's a complex topic. So I've tried to simplify it using a lot of frameworks. Blame it on my McKinsey training. But I think frameworks are really, really helpful because they try to help bring some structure to somewhat kind of messy, complex topics. So let's get into this. Let's get into the topic. So clearly, digital is a mega trend. It's often it's seen in the frame of this fourth industrial revolution. And it's a huge trend impacting so many aspects of our life, and it is about so many technologies that are coming together: AI, cloud, robotics, blockchain. There's so many things, and they're all kind of intermeshing with each other. And there are 3 kind of key things that are driving this. There is the whole growth of devices. There is the sheer explosion in bandwidth, and also the kind of unbelievable explosion in the volume, variety, velocity of data. If you just look at devices, over the last 10 years, we have gone from 5 billion devices to 25 billion devices, and over the next 5 years, we are going to double that. So just the explosion that is happening here is unbelievable. Yeah, unbelievable. But really the point I want to make is that I think we are still in the early stages of the digital era. Okay, we are still in the early stages of this mega trend. So I'm a sports guy, I'm a sports fan, and I'll use a cricket analogy that, think of this as a 5 test match series. And, we are at lunch of day 1 of the first test match. Yeah, I think that's where we are. Yeah, already the first session of the first test match, first day, has been very, very interesting and exciting, but there is a long way to go. Yeah, there's a long way to go. And what it also means is that if you have followed the last 2 Test series that India lost the first match but came back to win the series quite convincingly. So there is hope. Yeah. So if you think in the first kind of leg of this digital age, not done too well, I think there is hope. Yeah. So mega trend, but we are still in very early stages of this. Now, what is happening in this mega trend is that it's kind of exaggerating everything. So either you win big or you lose very big. Yeah. There is very little middle ground. There is no place to hide. Yeah, so you look at the winners, you look at, of course, Apple, Amazon, these are all like, you look at the valuation, these are all multi-trillion dollars. That's kind of quite ridiculous. It's like, more than the GDP of most countries. You look at Tesla, just in a couple of years, its valuation is more than that of the next 6 auto manufacturers combined. And equally, when you look at players, have lost, a BlackBerry or Nokia, or you look at Sears, it's quite stark, the last 10 years, how the revenues have fallen. And all of this has been exaggerated by COVID. Yeah, so in COVID, this whole irresistible trend of digital is just, the rise in digital penetration that we have seen over 2020 is kind of like what would in normal course would have taken 3 to 4 years. Yeah, so COVID has further exaggerated this, and you see that with COVID, like a company like Zoom over the last year has had 100% growth, but equally Cisco with their WebEx product, which was the bigger, had more market share, they have fallen. So again, the key point about the digital age is that there are tremendous opportunities. You can grow in a very discontinuous fashion. It is not a linear growth. I think Chatri's business is probably a very good example of that, one championship. But equally, you can fall like this. Yeah. So that's kind of makes the call for action for everybody very, very clear. Yeah. Now let's kind of investigate that. What's so different about digital? Why are many companies who are led by very thoughtful execs and so many bright people involved, but why are companies finding it? Why are leaders finding it very difficult to deal with this mega trend? And I think for that, one has to really get to the root of it. Often the conversation and actions are at a very superficial level. You have to get to the root of it. And for me, a very good way of understanding digital is, using this frame or concept of VUCA world. And I really, I realized this concept of VUCA when I was at Flipkart, which, and that's, the whole kind of e-commerce, world in India was really the VUCA world. And I think that whole concept has stayed with me. But the best way I have learned of getting your head around digital is this concept of VUCA. Volatile, it keeps on kind of, fluctuating, uncertain, you don't know the outcome. It's complex. The cause-effect relationships are not very easy to establish, and it's ambiguous. The reality is hazy. That is the nature of the digital world that we are in. Yeah, and in addition to all of this is a very, very multidimensional change. This is, while technology is the trigger for this age, but this is by no means only about technology, and that is perhaps the big mistake that companies and leaders make, thinking of this as just a technology transformation. This is about the customer. This is about your business strategy. This is about your organization strategy or organization transformation. It impacts people at all levels. Yeah. So this is truly, truly a multidimensional change. It is very high velocity. The speed is just one of the defining characteristics of this digital age. And finally, for the various things that are happening, the existing rules do not apply. Yeah, this is very different. And a lot of us who now have experience and think we are successful, and that's a problem. That's a problem because we have some scripting. We think we know how things work, but this world is very different, and it is a lot about unlearning what you know and being able to formulate and adapt to this new world. Yeah. So having set up this context, now let's get into it. So this whole complex, very large and complex puzzle. I've tried to break it down into these 7 kind of blocks. At the meta level, new rules of business. What are the fundamental shifts that all leaders need to make? Industry maturity curve. Having a way of understanding what is happening in your industry and what might happen. Yeah, which is a very necessary starting point for any digital transformation. Coming to digital technologies themselves, yeah, which is the heart of this process. Global delivery. I mentioned earlier, digital is global by nature. Yeah, it is about global demand. It's about global supply. Yeah, and you have to think about it. Organization transformation, to my mind, my experience, this is the biggest block. This is the biggest block. And also the literal meaning of it, that this is the bottleneck. Technology is very rarely the bottleneck. This is the bottleneck. This is where the biggest shift needs to happen. The first 5 blocks are more from an enterprise perspective, but the next 2 blocks are more from an individual's perspective, entrepreneurial leadership, what are shifts that leaders need to make, and then finally, next generation talent. I think digital age is great news for young talent, because experience, the value of experience earlier versus now is very different. And it's a lot more of a level playing field in that sense, and opportunity for discontinuous growth for young talent. Yeah. So those are the 7 building blocks. Let me get into some of the specifics. I'll try to go through this fast. Now, the first building block, which is at the meta level, what are the big shifts that I think need to be made? The first is about innovate and shape the future. When you think about growth, traditionally you would have said, okay, last year this is what I did, or this is my trend line. Okay, this is what I'm going to grow by. And this is the market share I'm going to aim for. And which in this world is completely irrelevant. Is completely irrelevant. In fact, it's a very, very limiting construct, because either the industry is kind of exploding, is growing, or it's kind of, it's really going down. So if you go with just trends, it's very limiting. Yeah. This is truly the first rule is about shaping the future. It is not taking the future as a given. It is shaping the future. It is creating markets. Again, I'll go back to the example of e-commerce. If you look at the e-commerce growth in India, it's not like a steady straight line. Every once in a while, Flipkart, or more recently, Amazon introduces a market kind of, a big innovation, and the growth curve shifts. That is how these markets have to be played now. What it also means is that you need to get a lot more comfortable cannibalizing yourself, because if you don't, somebody else will. Second rule, strategy lies in connecting the dots. I spent a lot of my career doing strategy. And you kind of go through a process, you kind of assess the market, corporate strategy, business unit strategy, break it down into plans, and then kind of annual priorities, and you execute. That just doesn't make sense in the VUCA world. Best laid plans, best laid strategies do not survive, that contact with, the violent reality of the VUCA world. The real deal in the VUCA world is execution. This is execution. You have to really, really focus on execution and what works and what doesn't work. You connect the dots, and as you connect the dots, that is strategy. So it's a very different way of thinking about strategy. It's a more agile way of thinking about strategy, very differently from the way it has been done traditionally. Co-create with customers. The traditional boundaries between customer and provider is absolutely irrelevant now. It has to be kind of one team. And that calls for a very, very different level of trust. Every company needs to be a technology company. May seem obvious to some, but not for most industries. In most industries, technology historically has been a support function. But now technology has to drive the strategy. It's easier said than done. It's just not about investing in technology. It is about changing the DNA of the firm. Simplify organization structure and processes. one of the very key aspects of competing in this digital age is speed. But companies are basically built around, the structures and processes are built around this one core aspect, which is risk management. We should not make mistakes. Yeah, and that's why you keep on layering it up. And there is a need to very dramatically simplify organization structures and processes. Build a learning and knowledge sharing organization. In this world, nobody can know it all. Nobody can know it all. Yeah, at an individual level or at a company level. And the key skill you need to build is learnability, that you build a learning organization. Rule number 7, build an open organization and web of partnerships. Similar to the previous rule where nobody can know it all, equally nobody can do it alone. Nobody can do it alone. There is just too much happening. There is too much happening. And this whole notion of partnerships is very, very important. And you need to be very flexible about it. Competitors becoming collaborators, collaborators becoming competitors very, very quickly. And finally, foster an entrepreneurial leadership culture. An entrepreneurial leadership culture. And the entrepreneurial culture is not just about going out and doing a startup. Every enterprise needs to have that culture. And the greatest risk in this VUCA world is not taking risks. Yeah, I'll keep going. The next kind of building block is about understanding what is happening in your industry. Yeah, and there is a notion of industry maturity curve, that different industries are at different kind of level of where they are on that digital journey. But there are a couple of very common aspects. Rising customer expectation. Netflix, Amazon experience is driving expectations in every industry. I look at my clients, and many of them are industrial companies, and they are all looking to invest a lot of dollars behind experience design, because even in those industrial customers, there is a expectation of very high touch, high quality, personalized experience. Disintermediation of value chains. In this digital world, given the power and the pull of the customer and also technology, the share of direct channels is rapidly increasing. A couple of sectors that I operate in, wealth management, the share of direct channels rising very significantly. Pharmaceuticals or life sciences, very dramatic shift happening. It has always been a B2B industry, where the customer is the physician, not the final patient, and that is changing quite rapidly. It is becoming a lot more of a patient-centric business model. Blurring boundaries across industries. Again, another industry that I'm very familiar with, telecom. The boundaries between telecom and media has completely kind of blurred. Yeah, new competitors emerging. Something that Leo would recognize very well. That you look at banking, and who is the main competitor that banks are worried about. It's not necessarily the other bank, but the fintech, or perhaps even Amazon and Google. So there are a lot of fundamental shifts happening across industries, and that's something which you need to understand and figure out what is most likely to happen for your industry. Building block number 3 is around technology, and this is something which I think many people understand. There are kind of these, there are different ways you can put it, but I've chosen to put it as these 7 layers: experience, analytics, operations, AI, data, blockchain, cloud. To me, the key issue is that, as you think about digital, and you think about technology, often transformation is driven through kind of, just selling technology, and sometimes, it can be, technology or a specific platform or technology for the sake of it. Yeah. And the real power of this digital technology stack comes when it is end to end, when it's like this well kind of synchronized orchestra, where each part of the orchestra needs to be high quality, but it has to kind of tune together. If it doesn't, then it doesn't really work. And that is really the key point for a key kind of success factor for digital transformation. Now, the starting point in this stack, of course, from my experience, is the customer and the experience design. But there are 2 elements here which I think are really, really important, and I'm sure Puneet will talk about it later. It is data. Data is the key kind of success data is the lubricant. Data is what kind of will drive whether you are in a virtuous cycle or you are in a negative cycle. You're in a vicious cycle with your technology stack. And the key trigger for transformation is really cloud. Cloud is just such a powerful force of transformation, and the whole definition and scope of cloud is continuing to change so dramatically. And it's something I feel very good about, because over the last 10, 15 years, there have been some very persistent set of technology challenges, especially on the data side. And I think where cloud now is, it is really providing very, very tangible and practical ways of solving some of those long-term problems. Coming to this whole point about global, I said earlier that digital by its nature is global. Yeah, it can't be boxed. In this digital world, every enterprise faces a paradox, or faces somewhat kind of contradictory set of challenges. Every enterprise has a challenge around cost, because one of the things we didn't really touch on the whole industry. What is happening in terms of industry kind of changes is this kind of pricing pressure. Every industry, there is a pricing pressure, and therefore there is a pressure on costs. But equally, every industry, there is a need for innovation and a need for moving at velocity. Yeah. So you need to do both. You can't just do one. Yeah. And for that, there is no option but to think about global delivery. Yeah, there is the scale you need in terms of your technology effort and the velocity that you need, and therefore the skills that you need. You need global delivery. Yeah, and we are having this discussion in the context of India. I think that's great news for India. So the way you leverage your global delivery is a very important aspect of succeeding in digital. Organization transformation, building block number 5. And as I mentioned earlier, this is perhaps the biggest kind of block. Yeah. And I'll just touch upon it. The starting point has to be the culture. How do you shift the culture, which is a more entrepreneurial culture? A couple of key things to point at, innovation. And again, in the context of India, we are so much caught in this whole jugaad thing that moving to a more systematic innovation paradigm, and also moving from process innovation to more significant customer experience and business model innovation, that is really, really key. And the other thing I would call out is around diversity. That again, this whole digital world, you need multiple, it's not unidimensional, it's very multidimensional. And to be effective, you need different thought processes, different ways of looking at it. And diversity, whether it is gender diversity or racial diversity, all forms of diversity are extremely important. It is, of course, a moral issue, but even more than in addition to that, it is a very, very tangible business issue. I'll shift gears, very quickly touch on the individual. As we think about leaders, one of the defining aspects of this VUCA world or digital age to me is this whole thing about paradoxes. Yeah. Now, you are faced with, as a leader, you are faced with a lot of seemingly contradictory objectives: growth, profitability, strategy, execution, short-term, long-term, quality, speech, intellect, empathy. There are so many dimensions of it. And I think this is one of the most defining attributes that leaders need to succeed in the VUCA world is mastering duality. It is not enough to make trade-offs on this. You have to manage both. Yeah, you have to manage both. There is this complexity, and your ability to master this, I think, is going to be, if there is one insight, real leadership insight from from my experience and what I've tried to capture in the book, is this whole notion of mastering duality. Another aspect of this, and it may seem strange coming in a book around digital transformation, is this need to also, the importance of spirituality. And spirituality to me is really a process of going inside yourself and anchoring yourself. Yeah. When there is so much happening outside, there are so much stimuli, so much which is you're getting bombarded with, being able to anchor within yourself is extremely, extremely important for leaders. Yeah. And yoga and mindfulness is already becoming kind of like a part of any CEO's kind of repertoire. And I think this is going to become more and more important. And finally, for young professionals, hey, what an opportunity! What an opportunity! The disruption is such an opportunity for discontinuous growth. There is a lot that can be talked about here. I'll touch on 2 points. One is be an entrepreneur. Yeah, be an entrepreneur, and that means create your own future. Now, whether you are doing, whether you're going out there and doing a startup, or you're even in a company. So one thing I have always done is that even at an early stage of my career, I always wrote my own job description. Yeah, it sometimes got me in trouble, but I think it generally was I think the right thing to do. You need to own your own future, and in this digital age, you can do that. And the other thing I would mention is the importance of problem-solving skills. It's a complex world. It's a complex world, and being able to zone down on the right problems is just such a critical skill, such a critical skill. So if there is one message, I can give to my young colleagues, it is this, be an entrepreneur and build problem-solving skills. I will end my presentation there. The thought I will leave is that, while, this topic is global, today our launch is in India, and I do want to, contextualize this for India. I think digital disruption is such an amazing opportunity for India to leapfrog. And there is so much going for India on this topic. Digital is democratizing access to information, to technology. And that's such an amazing thought, that, the best knowledge in the world, all the information. So whether you are, in a top school in Delhi, but for if you are in a taluka in Telangana, or you are there in somewhere in Maharashtra or wherever, that all the information is available on your mobile phone. This is such a great opportunity. This is such an equalizer. Yeah. And in addition, there are at least four very big kind of positives that India has: the smartphone penetration, the extremely low cost of data, the fact that we are already a leader in the IT industry globally. And Raman knows these numbers much better than me. You can look at the number in different ways, but at least 50% of the global IT industry, we have that that headcount. It's just such an amazing opportunity. And finally, the young population, 65% of the population below the age of 35, 850 million people, makes it the third largest country in the world. It's like just amazing. Yeah. And they are change ready. They don't have the baggage. So I just get very, very excited, what winning in the digital age overall means, but what it also specifically means, for India. And I think that sets up, the discussion for the panel that, can digital be that brahmastra? Can it be that force for unlocking the growth paradox that we have in India currently? So let me stop there, and Siddharth, back to you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nitin. In fact, as you said, can it be the brahmastra literally of helping solve India's growth paradox? How do we grow? We've got millions of people who are online, as you said, a great opportunity, but millions who don't even have access to electricity. How do we get them to be participants in this great transformation? So that, of course, Nitin helping us get a quick look at the book and setting, in fact, the entire contours of the debate. But before we get to the discussion, I'd like to quickly remind all our viewers that they too can take part in this discussion. They can stream the video from YouTube. They can share it on other social media platforms by sharing that link. And of course, here on Zoom, you can post in your questions. Do remember to use the hashtag winning in the digital age while you are posting a question. And for members of the press, do remember, while you're posting your questions, also mention the name of your media organization. So just before we actually get to our very exciting discussion, I'd like to, there's going to be a poll, and the lucky winner who gets the answers right will actually get a signed and autographed copy of Nitin's book. And but of course, there is a catch, as with all good things, that you have to be the fastest finger first. You have to get the answer right, and in 10 seconds. So that book, 7 Building Blocks of Successful Digital Transformation, Winning in the Digital Age by Nitin, that's up for grabs. So we are going to now show you, give you a question. You have 10 seconds. And the first question is, the 7 building blocks for successful digital transformation includes 4 options: new rules for businesses, industry, maturity curves, digital technologies, or global delivery model, organizational transformation, entrepreneurial leadership, next generation talent, or all of the above. So one of them is, of course, the correct answer. So which is the best correct answer? The one who gets it right in the first 10 seconds will get an autographed copy of Nitin's book. And the results, of course, will be on Incido's website. So you can track the results there as to who gets it. And of course, they will get that copy of the book. So great. So now let's just quickly jump straight into the discussion. Nitin, you set, you framed the debate. And the right answer, of course, is all of the above. So those who got that answer right will, the fastest finger first will get the book, a signed autograph copy of the book. Nitin, you set the entire contours of this debate. The big question, of course, is the paradox of growth. You also touched upon the fact that, last year has been extraordinary. We've been hit by a pandemic. Businesses have been completely wiped out. It's how do businesses then try and reinvent themselves very quickly? Nitin, you've talked about duality, the duality approach, where it's very essential to both grow quickly, but also sustain it for a marathon. So I want you to quickly jump in on this particular aspect, especially when we are looking at the pandemic. Businesses now have a greater strain than ever before. What do they do? And then I'm going to go to Chatri next, because he's got a personal insight into this as well. Nitin, first you.
Yeah, see, the pandemic has played out in strange ways, Siddharth. I don't think you can generalize that businesses have got wiped out. There are the impact across industries has been quite varied, and there are industries who have actually got a boost, and there are others which less so. I think the key, just talking about the pandemic, I think the defining attribute has been adaptability. That how quickly have companies been able to adapt their business model, their customer engagement, and the technology to actually benefit from this whole remote working paradigm. So I've actually been amazed that when the pandemic was playing out same time last year, and with a number of my colleagues and some great thinkers, the thought was that economically, this is going to be just like, a massive disaster. Yeah. But, yes, of course, it has been, very painful, but a lot of companies have done very well. And I think adaptability to me has been the key thing. I would love to hear from Chatri and other friends here.
Chatri, adaptability.
Yes. So, by way of background, everybody, One Championship is Asia's largest global sports media property. We operate in 154 countries where we have a live broadcast every week around the world across all platforms. So whether it's television, digital platforms, or social media platforms and the like, including, countries like China that have specific behind the firewall kind of internet. We're also very, I wanted to touch upon, especially the young leaders and the next generation leaders. The book has had a tremendous impact on me as a leader. And, Nitin had touched upon about being very optimistic about India. I actually see it, running a global business every day, that India has a very rare opportunity to be a true digital superpower, given the factors that Nitin outlined, but also the fact that this book, if you really follow it to a T, it's literally what we do every day at One Championship. We're the first global sports property to be born in the internet era, in the digital era. All other incumbent sports properties were born 100 years ago, 70 years ago, 80 years ago, 50 years ago, 30 years ago. And so they didn't have this digital first mindset that Nitin talks about. And this is so critical. I'll give you an example, okay? When the pandemic hit, the Singapore government decided to shut down the entire country. all borders were closed, and everyone was relegated to stay in their house. You're not allowed, literally allowed to leave the house, and you would face jail time if you did. So everyone stayed at home. The only thing you could do was grocery shop. And so you have to imagine the country, a hustling, bustling, iconic, cosmopolitan country. And it was like a ghost town. So the country was shut down March 28th for 3 months. And I didn't know if it was going to be, 12 months or 24 months, had no visibility. The first 2 or 3 days, I definitely was, down. I was depressed. I was disappointed. I was frustrated. I was like, because we are a live event, just like IPL has to throw events, right? And broadcast we need to throw events to keep our 154 broadcast partners happy and alive. Let alone our hundreds of millions of fans around the world who watch one championship and who rely on us for their magical memories with their families and friends and following their heroes, our world champion athletes. And but then I woke up like 2-3 days later and I'm like, actually, this crisis of the worst global crisis in 100 years is actually a phenomenal opportunity for our team and myself to see how extraordinary we are as leaders. And so I would add to what Nitin said about adaptability. It's also about resilience in a crisis. So a lot of people freeze when the crisis happens. Oh my God, our business is damaged, blah, blah, blah. And you can easily, as a team, fall into this death spiral. And so, when Nitin talked about spirituality, it's so true. Being very, very spiritual about what is your mission? What is your purpose? And one chapter, our purpose, our mission has been to unleash real life superheroes who ignite the world with hope, strength, dreams, inspiration. It's not about fighting. It's not about martial arts. It's not about esports. Actually, I always say our genre is martial arts, but our platform is humanity. So in any case, our team, I said, guys, girls, this is a time to elevate. A ship is not made for the calm waters of a harbor. It is made for rough seas in search of new horizons. And I said, we can't do live events. What can we do? Because of digital, our content machinery, we produce approximately 20,000 videos for TV broadcasts, for digital, social, etc. And our content is very much like software. The marginal cost of delivery is almost zero, right? For every new platform we go on. So we really just adopted the whole digital mindset. Luckily, we were born in that mindset already. And we said, okay, everyone's gonna be on their phones. Everyone's gonna be at home. What can we do? So we did a live stream music concert in partnership with Global Citizen from the US. So we had, incredible musicians like Jay-Z or Kanye West, Taylor Swift, and etc. We had installed millennial fan base. We then had our content team create all sorts of interesting content, live stream, as well as different ways engaging our fans. So we created video games, very hyper casual video games. We launched 2 or 3 over the summer. And guess what? In this pandemic, we were down for 3 months, April, May, June. So we were only operating for 9 months, technically, as a live sports property. In those 9 months, year over year, in comparison to 2019, which was a record year for us, our TV viewership was up 50%. And our digital metrics, viewership metrics, were up 300% year over year. So Nitin is absolutely right. Adaptability, but you see, we already had the digital transformation mindset. We already had the 7 building blocks entrenched in the company because we were born in that era. And we're already operating at a global scale. So I can tell you as a CEO, as a founder, as an entrepreneur, that Nitin's 7 building blocks are very much not just about India. It is a global phenomenon. And those 7 building blocks really helped me. I mean, it literally helped me step by step in terms of thinking every time I got lost.
Absolutely.
Just having to look.
Absolutely.
And so this is how but I would just say it's adaptability and resilience, but Nitin nailed it on the head with his mini version of the book. So I recommend it to anybody. Like, if you are serious about business, whether you're India, whether you're a global business leader, a future leader, I can't recommend it highly enough,
Absolutely. Well, Puneet, both Nitin and Chatri touched upon an important topic, adaptability, and also Chatri making a very important point that it has to be centered on the human experience. And Nitin's book has an entire section about this customer experience design. He talks about this at length. So I think that's key as well. Something that you do, Puneet, you are helping companies get onto the cloud. You're trying to find them solutions, but you also have old age companies which haven't really gotten their, wherewithals around this. How are you helping in that transformative process, Puneet?
Siddharth, first of all, Chatri, love the story. Love the way you've turned around your business. And to me, I think going back, connecting the dots between what Nitin said and what Chatri said, right? There are two parts to agility or adaptability or resilience, whatever we call it. One is our leadership mindset and our ability, Chatri, as you described, to turn around situations and look at the upside. The other is technology, right? You also need technology that is adaptable. You also need technology that can help you manage the VUCA world, as Nitin calls it, right? So I think 2, 3 things I've realized, Siddharth, in the past few months in India, especially, right? One, all businesses and all of us in India have realized that technology, digital technology, especially cloud, reacts really well to uncertainty, right? So businesses who were thinking deeply about digital and cloud and technology are going to come out of this crisis much stronger, right? So they have the agility that the capability that brings. Second, I think people have realized that technology and digital and cloud is not really an optional thing or a good thing to do. It's a question of survival, right? And it's getting very real now. And then finally, I think the other point, and I love the agility concept, right? And I apply agility to data, right? One of the things that we're trying to solve as AWS is, can we make data agile for organizations? Can we reduce the cost and risk associated with curiosity, right? Can we make curiosity really actionable, right? Imagine a world where all of us, all our employees, all our colleagues, all our team members can be as curious as they want, get access to information real time, and then action on it to go solve for the customer experience, as you said, right? That to me is a real upside of this crisis, if there's one.
Absolutely. And Raman, we got one of our audiences posing a question that Mandira asked, that is digital first mindset a must have or a digital native thought process? And also the fact that she also cites the example of BlackBerry. Again, so the fact is that, very often we see that some companies have successfully been able to make the transformation. Some companies haven't. What essentially are those key ingredients which will keep you in the game? Raman, you're on mute.
First and foremost, you use the BlackBerry example. Let me tell you, even BlackBerry has loyal customers. So there is a customer loyalty beyond it. But the question is whether in the new world you are able to build on that, and whether you're able to expand beyond where you are. And that is the crux. It is not good enough to be able to say, yeah, we are digital. And Nitin in his presentation brought that out, and the book brings it out beautifully. A lot of people think because they installed the technology, that is the be it all and end all of it. And they can say that they've got technology installed and now the customers will come in droves, etc. That these 7 items, as Nitin brought out, are the building blocks. These are the requirements for you to build your business in the digital world of where you want to take it. And yeah, there are laggards and some of them will die, maybe other than a few loyal customers like me for BlackBerry. But on the other hand, it is an opportunity to turn it around and bring it to different things. And, Chetri spoke about the COVID scenario, and I could almost feel the meetings that Chetri was having with his management team in the early days, like a lot of the IT industry was having those meetings. Because while, oh shit, what happened? How will we do it? We've got to figure out a way to do it. 98% of the Indian workforce in the IT industry started working from home. And, while at the end of it, you can say, look what we accomplished and what we did. When we started out, we didn't know how we would do it because a lot of them didn't have internet. A lot of them didn't have computers. A lot of them data requirements were there. There were some legal obstructions. I mean, I remember attending a meeting much before the digital age and much before Nitin would have thought of writing this book, with a government official in early 2000s. I went to say, allow me work from home. And I said, what is the problem? I opened the laptop and work from home, and he corrected me and said, Raman, don't say you work from home. You're in violation of law. You can say you answer emails from home. You're not in violation of law. So, there is an entire aspect of which way we will leverage the opportunities, how we will get the policies to work for us and build on the building blocks. And That is crucial. Nitin's example, last thing I want to make, Nitin, your example of saying lunch on day one of a 5-test series, that is a wonderful way to describe where we are. And there is a lot. Abhi game baki hai, and all of us have to play to it. All of us have to learn, and we have to learn from each other.
Absolutely.
I love what Raman said, about it's not just about the hardware. And this goes to the heart of Nitin's book. You see the 7 building blocks. It's not just about, hey, I know the technology, I understand them. It's about the organizational fit. It's about the entrepreneurial leaders. It's that mindset, right? And so it's the soft and the hard skills and experiences that come together and the centrality of a digital strategy, which is what Nitin was talking about. So that's why I said, I found the book again to be very profound, but that's how you're able to overcome and achieve extraordinary results as a company instead of being under attack. And I agree with Nitin. It's like unfortunately, digital is going to create superstars and going to create disasters. There is no in between. Either digital is fully entrenched in your organization with entrepreneurial talent, with an organization that's nimble and agile and forward thinking and adaptable, with all the latest technologies fully integrated and understanding the full scope and scale of everything, or technology is just a side issue, like it has always been with in the yesteryears, where you had the IT department and they took care of everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Siddharth, if I may just build on a point that Raman made. Raman kind of took that cricket analogy of where we are in the digital age, and I think it's very important. It's very important, and also kind of reflecting on some of the questions that are coming in the Q&A box. That I think it's fair to say that so far the digital natives have done exceedingly well, and the quote unquote legacy enterprises have found it very challenging. But at least my submission is that as Raman said, game abhi baki hai. Yeah, that there is still a lot to play out, and I believe that the legacy enterprises actually have great set of advantages as well, and something which I think they're trying to now figure out, and that I'd love to hear from Leo that because you have been involved with so many industries which are very very have a long kind of legacy and not easy to change. So it would be great to get your perspective, Leo, of how do you see from that lens?
And in fact, before Leo jumps in on that, Leo, just a quick question, just adding to what Nitin has said. Ashish Gupta has said exactly, I think what Nitin you're saying is digital transformation manifested in different sectors in different forms. So how do you pick that? The fact that, there is a variance of how this has happened in different sectors. A lot of it is also linked with finance. Nitin in his book talks about, playing offense and not defense, and also the whole concept of duality. So while you want to grow quickly, you want to also ensure that you're there for the marathon long run. As someone who's also so intrinsically linked with finance, how do you pick and choose, and how do you try and spot the winners, and how do you try and encourage businesses to grow?
I think fascinating discussion. And I think in a sense, we are all digital now. So the distinction between winning and losing in the future is less about whether you are digital and I am not, because we will all be digital. And you will have businesses that will fail and be digital, and businesses that will be successful and be digital. So the distinction on a forward-looking basis is going to be much less about, are you digital and am I not? I think that has been, of course, looking backwards in the rearview mirror, a source of distinction, and hence these debates about incumbents. But today, you look at any sector, including finance, which is often, viewed as a easy target, if you like, for digitized attack and so on, disruption. Reality is everybody is digital. It's not that the so-called incumbent banks are not digital players. Of course they are. The issue is, and this comes out when you talk about BlackBerry versus Apple. BlackBerry was a digital leader. It didn't fail because it wasn't a digital leader. But Apple was able to create a business proposition and an insight around customers, reimagine the way consumers would interact with technology to create a beautiful world of music and entertainment and social media, and put it all into somebody's pocket, while BlackBerry was serving Raman's email needs. So it's less about whether you were digital or not. It's about how are you reimagining the business you're in the context of the world we actually exist in today? And that's why it is such a powerful opportunity, as Nitin's book lays out, for young people, because this is all about reimagination. Technology is, of course, just a tool. It always has been. It's a very powerful tool. Mostly, I personally think, a tool for good. Occasionally, a tool that, like all tools, has to be managed. I mean, like the big knife in your kitchen drawer, it can be used for various things. So, of course, but generally, I'm an optimist about where technology is leading the world. And I think, I think India, in that sense, is an example of a country that has, of course, we have connectivity. We are fabulous at creating content. I think there are a few places that will create as much content as we do. And I actually think we are a liberal democratic sort of, we have liberal democratic traditions, which are very strong and resilient, and which, by the way, I think are a very important contributor to whether or not you succeed or fail as a digital economy. I think freedom of markets, freedom of thought are all going to be very important. And I certainly hope India will, evolve and sustain all of those elements. And I'm optimistic that we will, even as we come to regulate these businesses. So I think it is what's going to make a successful digital business, given that we are all digital. And I think what Nitin's trying to outline in his book is that you therefore have to think back to issues around your business model. What's the proposition you're trying to build with consumers, and how are you going to lead? And these are, in a way, traditional questions which have to be repositioned for an era in which you have access now to digital technologies. And so reimagining how you use these powerful tools to answer these very old questions is precisely the opportunity, I think, that we have before us. And it's a fabulously exciting opportunity. And if you're 25-year-old, if you're a 25-year-old youngster living in India, this is probably one of the best places you could be today as you contemplate your future.
Absolutely. Chatri, you wanted to quickly jump in?
Well, I agree and disagree with Leo here. I agree that everything's digital, but you see, again, I'm just going to go back to Nitin's book. And I'm going to talk about the sports industry in general. I see my counterparts, especially the incumbents, as dinosaurs. They don't understand social media. They don't understand digital. Yes, they call themselves digital, but you can see where the strategy execution are amiss. You can see the culture. You can see how the CEOs talk in these industry conferences without naming names. So I think there are various degrees, and I think you need I think if we roll forward 10 years, I think everyone will be much more comprehensive and hopefully follow all the 7 building blocks of what Nitin's laying out here. But at least from what I see today, even banks, they call themselves digital. As a startup guy, I take a look at even what's happening here in Singapore. I look at Grab, who just won the rights for a digital bank. And I would bet on him and his team all day long to out execute all the incumbent banks. And it's not that I don't think the incumbent banks are amazing. It's just that it's so hard when you're entrenched in old ways with an old leadership team who has been in the banking industry for 30 years. This is the way things are done. And they might understand digital at a surface level or a strategic level, but it's one thing to tie strategy with sharp execution and have entrepreneurial leadership lead the way. So I see a huge gamut of at least in my industry, right? Where I can see there's some people who are very switched on and some people who are switched off, who say they're on, but you don't know what you don't know. This is what I feel like is happening, at least in my industry.
Nitin, you talk about learning to reinvent for tomorrow and the building organization culture to succeed in the digital age. You're talking about agility. You have to be quick and agile, exactly what Chatri is saying. So you're going to elaborate on this, Nitin?
Yeah, I was also looking at some of the questions, again, coming to this theme of, how do you get the dinosaur to move, or large enterprises, who are not born who are not born in the digital age. See, one of the themes that I want to lay out is that, see, big bang execution is typically very, very problematic or risky in the digital age. Yeah, is very, see, this is, everything is changing very rapidly. It's changing very rapidly. And if you construct very large programs, which are billions of dollars and, which will change the world, but will take like 3 years or 5 years to do, they are doomed to failure. Yeah, because as you progress on that, and by the time you're midway or even like quarter of the way, the assumptions behind that program would have changed. Yeah. So my recommendation here is, what I call the two-speed execution strategy. Yeah, which is what I think Chatri was also getting to. In this world, there is, the premium is execution. And how do you define very specific business problems and very specific customer pain points and drive initiatives of that which force you to go across the stack? Because if your program is that I want to build like data lakes of all data lakes for my enterprise, yeah, or I'm going to do this complete legacy modernization, it will take many years and you'll be waiting. But if you take specific problems and drive through the stack, and which I call the speed one, that gets the virtuous cycle going. There was also a question about how do you get a virtuous cycle going? You get virtuous cycle going with successes. And that speed one is very important. But at the same time, going with the duality, the speed two, which is how do you build out kind of the broader architecture or the infrastructure, which will be scalable, which will make solving future problems easier, is also very important. And you know what? Speed one and speed two need to be connected. If they are disconnected, it's not two speed, it's just two different worlds. Yeah. Yes. So this whole two-speed model and this very sharp focus on the customer problems to be solved and use that to go through the stack and trigger the virtuous cycle, I think is a very, very important aspect to consider.
Yeah. And I think that's what Raman was touching about earlier, right? It's not just about the hardware. The organizations must be young and nimble and innovative. And you see, it's one thing to have a seasoned CEO where he's a 55 or 6-year-old CEO who knows everything about the banking industry, as an example, or whatever industry, doesn't matter, whatever industry. And it's another thing to have an organization that truly can drive that strategy, right? So, the younger millennials, they grew up on a smart mobile device. They understand it better than all of us, because we grew up in a pre-internet world and then switching over to internet. The young kids, they grew up with a smartphone when they're 4 years old, or 5 years or whatever it is. So it's the organization has to be fully aligned. Otherwise, it's just going to be and that's where I see companies missing in the next 3 years or 5 years. Is the strategy might be right, but as what Nitin is talking, the two-speed thing, and then what Raman is talking about, the organization must be
I want to build on one of the points that Nitin raised, just to bring that in focus. I think in the older organizations, if you spend Monday morning 1 hour looking at customer feedback and reacted to it, that was good enough. In the digital world, it has to be your culture.
Yes.
Everybody has to believe, because it can change so dramatically.
Yep.
And some of the digital organizations, you put out a tweet of a negative nature, they get back to you in minutes, not even in hours.
Seconds.
Those are the organizations that will succeed. And it is not about, I have a customer service team that looks after it. The customer service, it's the cultural aspect. And Nitin has devoted the entire section on talking about the culture of the organization. The culture has to undergo a change. The only place where I disagree with the youngest member of the panel is where he says those 55-year-olds don't have to do it. He's the youngest, so he can say that. But the culture, there is a direct correlation to age and everything. But the culture, the underlying cultural aspect, I think, is of fundamental importance. Nitin referred to it, and I wanted to bring it out for the audience to understand.
Let me just say one thing to Raman's comment. I was not talking about ageism or discrimination on that. No, what I meant was that
you were.
No, maybe I'm not articulating right. Meaning that, you see, in the old world, a CEO, seasoned CEO, 50 or 60-year-old in an industry, that was considered the par for the course, meaning that because they had experience. But in this new world, the 50, 60-year-old CEO has to be in touch with the 18-year-old and really understand that. So it's not about, you know, what Nitin was talking about in his book. It's not about, you know, in the old world, there are old business rules that applied. A seasoned CEO who'd been in the industry for 30 years, that would be, he or she would typically have all the markers for success. Today, that does not necessarily, that could actually be a hindrance, right? Being 30 years in the industry, being 56-year-old, if you're out of touch with, you know, technology and how consumers use it every single day. So I agree with you, Raman. You know, and I agree with Leo. It's the war front is digital. The question is, you know, who adapts first and how entrenched is it in the centrality of the culture? You know, it's all the points in Nitin's book.
Puneet, how many 60-year-old CEOs do you have coming, and how many younger CEOs for your business?
No, I love the debate. Yeah, it's fascinating, Jatri. I mean, if I can connect the dots and take it back to Nitin's book, right? I mean, there are two ways to frame this, right? In the last 12 months, the pandemic has impacted us in two ways. The first way is to say where Chatri is going, saying, listen, it's exaggerated the gap between the innovators and the laggards, right? Because that's one way to frame it. The other way to frame this, and I'm with Raman on this one, is, and that's where Leo, you were going as well, it's leveled the playing field. In the last 12 months, I'm seeing large enterprises and businesses shed baggage like never before because they don't have an option, right? And again, Raman, to your point, absolutely agree with you. You can't change culture overnight, but I'm seeing decision-making move at a pace that I've never seen before. I'm seeing digital transformation happen in days and weeks and months, not in quarters and years. Right. So my only submission on this, I agree with you. It's the challenge is not technology. The challenge is leadership, culture, your ability to experiment, your ability to react to these changes. And those would be the winners. It's not a question of if you're early in the game or late in the game.
Absolutely. And very quickly, if I can, Puneet, a question for you from Manish Suri, that how do you make curiosity actionable?
The old tools don't work, right? And I think they're all used to the old world of database tools and licensing norms, which are really good at locking you into hardware refresh cycles and licensing norms. And that just doesn't make curiosity actionable or risk-free, right? So you need the new age tools, and that's where some of the platforms and cloud is a great enabler of this, right? Your ability to go, and Nitin was talking about building data lakes. We're working with customers, and we call it 3 in 3 in 3, which is take 3 data sources, take 3 use cases, and give us 3 days, and we'll solve that problem for you. We'll make that curiosity simple and easy and actionable, right? So that's how the world is changing. So the old tools will not work. You'll have to think about the new tools. And then finally, it's also the cultural part, right, that Raman is going back to, right? Do you have a culture of experimentation? Do you have a culture of asking questions? Do you have a culture of trying things and breaking them and being okay with it and not going back to your natural muscle of noise-free operations and all of that, right? So I think it's both technology and culture that have to come together to make this happen.
Absolutely. Leo, lots of noise in India. It's never a boring day in this country. We've got a huge population. In fact, Nitin talks about this in his last slide, a huge opportunity. The number of people with smartphones, the young population that we have, but we also have a population problem. So, where do you see this paradox getting sorted? How do you think digital transformation can, substantially help us leapfrog in terms of trying to tackle that growth paradox? Leo.
Yeah, that's a very important point. I think, see, as you build businesses in today's world, and as I will stress, all businesses are going to be digital, but some will be successful and some won't. You can debate why, but the point is you're also going to have to build digital businesses that are sustainable in the era beyond disruption. What you've seen around the world, India is not unique at this, is you first break a lot of China, right? That's what disruption is. In that process, actually a fair amount of damage is caused in some directions. And we've seen that. There are, you may have digital lenders who cause a certain amount of friction in society. You may have issues around gig economy. You may have issues around toxic work culture. You may have issues around responsibility. And, the Tatas had a certain sense of civic orientation and duty. Will the new economy replace that sense of social conscience and so on? So I think one of the things which I believe will happen, and it'll happen due to a combination of regulation, of course, but I think it'll also happen because of a maturing in the way that the governance and growth and so on happens within the true successful digital leaders of tomorrow. Not all will be successful, but one of the reasons they will be successful is because they'll come to recognize, like industry has been through the ages, you are a part of society, you are a part of community. And beyond the excitement that a 25-year-old may feel about watching, the ticker of his market cap go up, ultimately the sustainability of the business, if it's not just going to be a meteorite, is about actually putting roots down deep in society. And I think the day we can see businesses starting to do that, and to some extent, and Amazon in the US is possibly through that curve, but there are many others which have not got there yet. So I certainly hope in the interplay between what society is going to ask of successful digital businesses and the way that entrepreneurial leaders, young leaders who are building these businesses, we will find ways to address society's problems. And I think, I think that the true leaders of tomorrow will find a way to answer those questions, Siddharth.
Absolutely. And I'm going to ask all the panelists, for their key takeaways, because, we're running out of time. We've actually got lots and lots of questions. I mean, that's the level of interest that we have on this. We'll, of course, tell all our viewers and audiences how they can continue this debate. But coming to you, Raman, and taking on from what Leo was talking about, that look, there is a great hope for the future. This is a technology, this is a transformation. We can't stop it. However, we can embrace it, and literally this can help us, climb mountains a lot faster and better. Your key takeaways, looking at some of the issues that Nitin has helped framed in his book, your key takeaways from this debate.
So I'd love to build on what Leo said and what the book Nitin brings out in the book. The same, the foundational aspects, and I'll take the example of the industry I'm from. See, work from home has become the new buzzword. And everybody says it will never be the same, it's work from home. And of late, the term I've been using is, it is not yet work from home, it is work from residence. A large part of our 4 million employee base is not at home. They have come to towns and cities to have their residence. And setting up a process to say 4 days you work from home and 1 day you come to office means they have to stay in those metros. We have to enable true work from home where they can go home and eat their mother's food out of their mother's kitchen. That is true work from home. And the reason I'm bringing that out is there is a lot to be learned. How is that person going to be trained? Somebody spoke about gig workers. Gig workers, I think, is the future. How do we compensate gig workers? What is the taxation? What TDS do I have to take? Is it GST-able? Is it not GST-able? There is a lot that has to happen for it to become reality. Great first steps. Companies have responded. Real estate rent market is down in the dumps because companies have given up real estate. But the next generation is yet to come. We have to architect that. We have to imagine that. And the digital world needs imagining. The thinkers who will think of the future. That is what we need.
Absolutely, Puneet. Important point Raman makes, that we need to enable people to at least have the infrastructure in place, and yet we want them to leapfrog. So how are you helping, and your key takeaways from this?
That's exactly my job description. I probably need to do a better job, but I agree with Raman. I think to me, there are 2-3 takeaways. First, I think to Nitin's first point, right? I think it's speed and agility, which are the game changers. Speed is a new cost, right? We've all built our businesses and technology thinking about cost. Now we've got to think about speed, right? The second takeaway is the challenge is not technology, right? Today, there is enough technology. AWS is an example. We've got enough capabilities to run any application in the world on the cloud, right? Any application. Doesn't matter what you're building. But it's not about technology. It's about leadership. It's about culture. It's about uncertainty and your ability to experiment and try things. And that's what I think Nitin's book is. The 7 building blocks are the right foundation, both for people like me who are running tech businesses and for young people who are trying to build a career and build digital skills. I think these are really important blocks to work with.
Chatri, your key takeaways. You're on mute. You're on mute, Chatri.
Sorry, apologies. What a lively discussion. So my big takeaways, again, it's I think Raman at his very first comment hit the nail on the head for me. It's not just about the hardware. It's not just about the leadership. It's the full integration of an organization. And as Darwin said, it's not the strongest or the smartest that survive. So it's the species that adapts most to change. We are in a VUCA world, as Nitin said. But how do you create an organization that adapts to change relentlessly, whether it's the micro changes or whether it's the big momentous shifts, inflection points in an industry. For me, these are actually going back, ironically, the digital transformation is as much about what's happening in technology, even more so though, the new generation leader, the new generation leadership team must be perpetual learners every day, just in the same way actually Nitin is already, or everyone here on the panel. We love always learning, growing, evolving. I think that is a mindset that an organization has to have. That's for me. Yeah, I think Raman hit the nail on the head in the very first comment.
Nitin, there's a lovely chapter heading, and it says from your book, "Take personal responsibility and change the world." I think that's your last chapter in your book, and I think it's really beautiful what you said out there. You've given the prescription. You've talked about your real life example. It's a labor of love, your book. I can't say what are your favorite portions of the book, but again, I mean, just if you can touch upon this particular line that take personal responsibility and change the world.
I feel very strongly about it. One of the, again, going back to the Stephen Covey kind of, example that, one of the concepts, I learned, from there was, you have this zone of influence and zone of concern. Yeah. Zone of influence is something you can do something about. Zone of concern is something you feel worried about, concerned about. Yeah. And if we can all focus on the zone of influence, you can take responsibility for doing something, that zone of influence keeps on growing. That is really how you grow as a leader. Yeah. You grow as a leader based on the responsibility you take. It is not something that somebody gives to you. Yeah. And kind of, and and really deep rooted, and what really I'm trying to say through the book, is a call to action. Is a call to action. There is such a tremendous, humongous opportunity out there, and it's for everybody. Yeah, and very much so for India, perhaps even more so for India. But it's such a humongous opportunity. The irresistible march of digital and AI and cloud. It's an irresistible march. Nobody will be able to stop this. Yeah. Now the question is that how do we harness this opportunity into making something meaningful at an individual level, at an enterprise level, and at a society level. Yeah, all three levels. Yeah, and we will do it through actions. We'll do it through action, and that really is what I would really want to lay out. That hey, a call for action, and think about this two-speed or multi-speed implementation. I think that's how do you break down a big kind of hazy kind of thing into doable steps and get going, because that's really what gets a virtuous cycle going. Call to action.
Absolutely, call to action. And I'm going to call the audience to action right now before we proceed. And we have another question ready for them. Let's just see how much they've gained from the experience shared by all of you. And you remember the person who gets the answer right, the fastest finger first gets the answer right, will get an autographed copy of that book. The question: in a VUCA world, describe our world of unprecedented speed and change. The acronym stands for what? Volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, very understandable, common algorithm, variable, united core analytics, or all of the above. So of course, the first person to get that right gets an personally autographed copy of Nitin's book. And I mean, it's not just this question, but I think just about the kind of, depth of knowledge that all our panelists have, shared today, and they've been so generous with that. And obviously the first one is the correct answer, and the person who actually has won, they can find out from Inseedo's website about that, and of course they will be sent a copy of that book. Well, we'd also like to just remind all the people who've joined us on this debate today that you can continue tracking this debate. Nitin, it's been a pretty lively debate. Your book really, setting the entire contours of this, I think, very exciting and fascinating debate that we've had, and very, fortunate to have world experts on this platform, unveiling that book with you, Nitin.
Yeah, I really feel extremely privileged to have friends, colleagues, mentors, who are here, Leo, Raman, who have been mentors, for decades now, and Puneet and Chatri, who have been colleagues also for a long time. So it's a very special, it's a very special moment for me to kind of being able to unveil this book and the opportunity of sharing that moment with people that I respect deeply and who have played a very important role in my life and career is a very special thing. So all of you, thank you so much for making time. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Yeah, and also I think we had over 1,000 people who joined this webinar, which is I really appreciate your time, and I hope there are some interesting learnings that you took away. That is really the intent of the book. That there are a lot of interesting experiences, learnings that I've had in my career to bring it together in a way which you can absorb, which benefits you. So I would love to hear from you. I would love to continue that discussion of what you have taken away, or maybe what are some things which still need to be explored. Hey, this is still evolving. This is a long way to go, and I certainly intend to continue this as a theme. Hopefully, this is a book where we have many editions every kind of second year or so. So I would love to learn from you, hear from you. Thank you.
Absolutely, Nitin. And I think the book has given enough thought for a debate and to provoke questions, as well as, a nice lively debate that we had. And the book, of course, is available online via Amazon or Flipkart, and you can just order it from there. And of course, as Nitin said, that any thoughts, suggestions, comments, and feedback, or what perhaps the next book or the edition should look at, you can just get in touch with Nitin, and that's his email out there, Nitin at winningindthedigitalage.com. So you can all get in touch with him as well. And for all the other viewers who've also been with us and they've been tracking this, they can continue to get information, and especially for the media queries, you can contact both AD as well as Ashish with their contact details on the panel. And do remember that special kits will be sent to all the media participants, including Nitin's presentation and the key takeaways from this debate. And at this point, I'd like to thank all our audiences and especially our panel for taking the time out and joining us for this very exciting debate and the book launch today. Thank you all so much, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations once
Thank
again,
you.
Nitin. Thrilled for you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye. Be safe.
Bye, everyone. I think we had a great discussion.
Oh, it was fascinating.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks once again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. And congratulations again, Nitin.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Well done. Very proud of you. It's fabulous.
Yeah.
And you had a lot. There were a lot of people who showed up, more than I would have thought. So
Yeah,
that's a good sign.
1,000 plus is amazing. It is amazing.
Yeah.